In a world that already hates and fears them, what if only black people had superpowers? Welcome to the first Geek History Lesson book club as we discuss the Black Mask graphic novel, Black. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Superhero Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or team from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour. And this week we are introducing our new annual monthly segment.
Well, it's not annual, it's monthly.
Well, we're trying it out for this year.
Oh, yes, that's what you meant.
This year is our, I know I said that poorly. This is our trial year where we're going to see how it goes. But people have been asking us to do more trade reviews, to go into storylines. So we listened to you. And we're doing it.
Yeah, this is something that we had been talking about a lot through 2018, about trying something like this, a monthly book idea where Ashley and I would go and talk about, panel by panel, page by page, luminary books, and then also use some of your comments in the episode so that you can read the book along with us. So I guess right now, this is probably the best time to put out a spoiler warning for Black Volume 1 by Black Mask. We're going to be talking about the first 6 issues of Black. If you have not read them, I would really suggest reading them because a lot of this podcast is not going to make sense to you.
It's very true indeed.
Yes.
Also, the book is almost 2 years old, so
yeah,
you should read it.
Now, Ashley, we picked Black Mask Volume 1 by Black Mask Studios. We picked Black Volume, a lot of Black.
It's confusing.
Black Volume 1 as our first option for the book club. And this was a choice that you made.
I advocated for this choice.
Why did you choose for this book?
February is Black History Month. We wanted to celebrate Black excellence in comics.
Even though we're getting in there in the last week.
Well, you know what? We're getting it in here at all.
It's
just the way the schedule worked out. Also because we did want to make sure that we had independent comics accurately represented when we were doing these book clubs. And I'm going to say it right up top. Yes, Jason and I acknowledge that we are 2 Caucasian people. And yes, we acknowledge that that is the point of view that we are coming at this book from. But we still think that this is a great choice, and we think that we are valid in commenting.
Hey, I just want to flat out say straight out of the gate, I am super biased towards loving anything Jamal Igle does.
There you go. Absolutely.
So I also want to point out to our listeners right now, the new, not semi-new, Geek History Lesson intern, Brago the cat, is in the studio right now. Brago, do you want to say something on the podcast? Thank you, Brago.
He's literally chewing his feet right now.
That is also a new 2019 addition to the Geek History Lesson podcast.
That's true, yeah.
You can find pictures of Brago all over either of our Instagrams. All right, let's jump straight into this, Ashley. Of course, we are still going to do a 10-cent origin and a meet cute and segments you're going to hear, but the main meat of the lesson will be a discussion. So
yes, it will.
Let's hop into the 10-cent origin. Ashley, what is that?
The 10-cent origin is where we give you all the basic creators, dates, and important details that you need to know in case you go to a really, really cool cocktail party and someone wants to know what's the deal with Black.
The 10-cent origin for Black is Black Volume 1 collects issues 1 through 6 of Black. It was written by, and I'm going to butcher everybody's names, and I'm extremely apologetic, Kwanzaa Asejefo.
I think it's Osayewo.
I could not find the interview.
I've never been able to hear him say it,
yes.
So we do apologize, and we tip our hat respectfully.
Co-creator designer is Tim Smith. The artist is Jamal Igle. The covers are by Carrie Randolph, and it debuted in September of 2016. Let's move into the next section. The Meet Cute.
Yes, the Meet Cute is the part of the podcast that we stole from romantic comedy writing, where we tell you the first place we ever meted something and how cute it was.
Ashley, do you remember when we first encountered Black? Because I do.
I remember where I first encountered Black. You came to me and said, have you heard about this amazing Kickstarter?
Yes, I did.
It's about a world where only Black people have superpowers. And I said, that sounds great. Mm-hmm. So that's where I met it. I'm assuming that you met Black somewhere before.
Yes. Well, I was going to bring up that this originally was a Kickstarter comic. Mm-hmm. And fun fact, when Ashley and I first went to New York Comic Con for the very first time, which I believe was in 2016, or 2015. I'm not certain about the year there. we went there. Kerry Randolph was at Artist Alley in New York Comic Con.
I bought issue 1 from him.
Yeah. We bought it together.
Yeah.
We bought it together because we were just like, oh, man, it's out. Because we had only known it from the Kickstarter at that point.
That's right, yes.
So that's our Meet Cute for Black. All right, so let's jump into this. We're going to sort of walk our way through the book issue by issue, talking about specific things, specific themes, and any other notes that come into it. Now, Ashley, when you jump into issue 1, first off, let's talk about this. The book is in black and white.
Or grayscale, yes.
Intentional?
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that is one of my first 3 notes that I made on this. I think it's intentional.
I do too.
But I'm also going to bring up, this was originally a Kickstarter book. It got picked up for larger publication later. Having something drawn in black and white or in grayscale is a cost-saving measure.
100%.
And it's something that Jason and I did when, we were working on Thief and Terrific. It's something that we've considered going into books. I do think it's intentional. I think all you have to do is look at the title and the subject matter. I think it serves this book well. I like the grayscale art in this a lot.
Well, also in this book, you have to note right out of the gate, we have a scene where it's 3 young African-American men playing basketball. They are confronted by the cops, and there is a shooting of young black men.
Innocent
black young men by police. And we get to see the whole scene in very graphic detail. Now, when I read this scene, not only is it very timely, not only is it very tragic because this kind of event happens in America almost every day now, which is terrible and sad. It also reminded me of a similar choice by the Black Lightning pilot.
I was going to bring that up.
Where Jefferson Pierce is arrested innocently.
Yeah, for driving while black.
Yeah, what did you think about this? Now, I talk about in a lot of our writing stuff, and you'll hear it on the podcast, that I think it says something about where you first meet a character in a story. And this is our first introduction to the main character of the book, Kareem.
Yeah.
Him being shot.
I think it's a very strong. I think issue 1 is maybe the best issue of the book.
I agree.
I think it is. It comes at you so strong right at the gate. It's such a strong POV. We are confronted with this is post Trayvon Martin. We are confronted with a very harsh reality about this world. Something that I think we all like to think that we've moved past, and we really, really haven't. And I think starting the book with such a strong social and anthropological POV is great because it does get blown open and it gets very comic booky later on. I think it's interesting what it says about Kareem, particularly where he ends up in the end with that shot where he's jumping off the building, because we meet Kareem as a victim, and we meet Kareem as a victim of injustice and as an innocent, and he's really going to have such a strong arc coming from that place. I also love the introduction that we get in this opening scene to the police detective.
Lurch?
No. Is it Water? Is it Walters? I wrote both down in my notes, so I apologize for making a mistake. The female detective who the whole time they're trying to call her by her first name, and she's like,
"It's Waters."
Waters.
I have her in my notes as Ellen.
Yes, because they keep saying Ellen, and she goes, "You can call me Detective Waters." She's my favorite character in the book. I'm going to tell you right now, and it is such a strong POV that she is a cop who is a cop for all the right reasons. She's working in her home borough, and she can't stop. This is the kind of thing she's trying to stop, and she can't. And that's a really strong introduction to her character as well, because she is our POV everyman character in this book.
Real quick before we go any further into this,
sure.
I want to bring up something that I probably should have done in the beginning, and this is our first book club, and I apologize for the mistake. I should have said the synopsis.
Oh. Well, we're going to go into this in pretty deep.
I have that right now.
Okay.
We'll get this out of the gate, the second book club. I apologize, everybody. The synopsis for Black, of course, is in a world that already hates and fears them, what if only black people had superpowers? After miraculously surviving being gunned down by police, a young man learns that he is part of the biggest lie in history. Now he must decide whether it's safer to keep a secret or if the truth will set him free. That, of course, is a very intentional riff on the Dr. Martin Luther King, we will be free speech. So there's a pretty cool, again, the art by Jamal Igle, who you know from the very famous Sterling Gates Supergirl run, and he's so good. the sequence where Kareem wakes up and hops out and bounces across all the cars, to me is such a cinematic sequence.
I was going to say that.
I would love to see that in a movie. It kind of reminded me of the Matrix Reloaded highway fight where they're jumping all over cars. But
I'll be shocked if this doesn't get made into a movie.
I think it was already optioned.
I think it was, yeah.
But then we meet the character. He's sitting in an alleyway and he's in
Juncture. Or as I like to call him, Ultimate Nick Fury Light.
In my head, I kept calling him Samson because he looks like Samson from Invincible.
Yes, he does.
With the same kind of beard, the Abe Lincoln beard. I like this character a lot.
So do I.
And I get the idea why you call him Nick Fury because he has the gun straps across his sort of X symbol.
Well, and he's also he's an African-American character who's in charge of a secret organization who is basically building an initiative through our young lead. So,
and we meet his two members of their team, and they sort of attack. And this is sort of where the book really leans into some heavy X-Men territory.
Yes.
Now, X-Men, of course, built around, bigotry and racism, all that kind of stuff like that. But it cuts away to, we get a very stereotypical Southern house. And we meet an elderly lady on the porch who, of course, is singing I'll Fly Away. Now, this is the part of the book that, to me, I thought maybe leaned on the metaphor, the analogy a little bit too, or a little cliche, a little tropey.
Sure.
I understand why they wanted to do it because they immediately wanted to break you away from it.
And tropes aren't bad. Tropes are tropes for a reason. But they're worth pointing out.
Yes. But we, of course, again, and the reason why I keep bringing up Matrix is we start dropping into some moments that are very Matrix-y.
She feels like the Oracle.
She feels like the Oracle. He walks through a door. Suddenly, we're on a rooftop.
Yeah.
And our, help me out, the Samson character, help me out.
Juncture.
I want to call him Samson, I'm sorry. Juncture pushes Kareem off the rooftop, very similarly to Morpheus pushing Neo.
Yeah.
In the first Matrix. Now, Ashley,
yes.
Let me ask you, am I looking at this too closely, or is this inspired by the Matrix?
I definitely think it's inspired. It is hard post-Matrix when you are doing something with a secret organization or where you are revealing that someone has been living in, it has become, it's a trope, you living in the Matrix.
I understand that, but this directly lifts two things from the Matrix.
I don't think you are wrong in those comparisons.
Okay.
I will definitely agree. I think those are well-placed observations.
Now, of course, the end of this first issue, we sort of get the origin of the superpowers in this world, which I actually like. We find out that people in this world have superpowers because of quirks. Now,
okay, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Did you know what quirks were before going into this book?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yes.
So for me, I had to do some furious Quark, as far as I know, is an out-of-date design computer program.
Oh, no.
I mean, I knew quarks were something about subatomic. I wasn't familiar with them. So I will say, we sort of brought up there's a lot of heavy Matrix inspiration. There's a Nick Fury inspiration. I think making their powers based on their quarks was very smart. It's very different from what we're used to see, because a lot of superhero powers are just you have powers, deal with it. Or an accident, deal with it.
Without giving any spoilers to any other stories, quarks are very similar to black energy or dark energy.
Yeah.
As some people, it's sort of an element of the universe that we know about,
but we're not too familiar with.
We're not smart enough to figure it out yet.
But so I thought choosing to make it quarks was a really unique, interesting thing for the book to do, and it made me have to read articles.
I actually enjoyed it as well, and I thought it was a smart choice because of the idea of moving away from radiation.
Yes, which was sort of the big thing in the 60s until now.
You're going to get cancer.
Yeah.
You're going to get cancer. But this is the big reveal of the book where Kareem finds out that these powers only manifest in black people, the hook of the book.
A great hook.
It's an ingenious hook.
Yeah, and there's Juncture has a speech later on about how that's affected the socioeconomic world and how it was affected by the slave trade, and it blows out this world in a really interesting way.
Now, as we move into issue 2, first off, the covers are fantastic.
Awesome. Very evocative.
The covers are amazing. The issue 2 cover. Talk about this book being in your face. and being up your grill with superheroes. Issue 2 cover, 3 black children being lynched.
Well, we started this book with 3 black children being shot.
I never saw issue 2 on newsstands, but I can only imagine how much that would have just grabbed you if you were walking through a comic book shop being like, what?
Well, and think about it. Like, this is probably going to be placed on the independent shelf next to something like Saga or Invincible, which are very bright, colorful superhero genre covers. So to be struck by this, you also know immediately where this book is coming from.
Now, as we move into issue 2, a lot of time passes. We get some, training sequences with Kareem, and we learn that Kareem is sort of unique compared to some of the other black characters in the book.
Yes.
Now, Ashley, did you like this idea that Kareem was sort of the ultimate chameleon, kind of quark, mutant, whatever you want to call him?
I did like it because you can use the term Mary Sue all that you want about a leading character. Your lead character has to be the most special or the most unique, or else why are they your lead character? It's the same thing with Harry Potter. It's the same thing with Wolverine and Jean Grey. Like, this is what I expect from a comic book. I expect to know why this character that we met in the first issue is the most special. And I like that they reflected back on it's because he has the most complex quark compared to everyone else. And
he has the most midichlorians.
You could make that analysis, I guess, or that comparison if you wanted to.
Not even Master Yoda's midichlorian count is that high.
I truly don't remember that sequence.
I am quoting
so
episode
glad.
1, The Phantom Menace, where they talked out of Gillette razors.
There you go.
That's a real fact. Look it up.
I know. I liked the training sequence, the sort of danger room sequence that we get in a lot of superhero origins with Kareem. I think it's a good way to give us the exposition dump that scene basically is.
Now, Ashley, I know that you are a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yes.
And there is a character in issue 2 that I love.
Yeah.
And I love actually that this book includes it. Busy Base.
Yeah.
The transgender girl.
I love it. I love that she's upfront about it. I love that they don't skirt the issue. Like, it's not... We have a lot of great coming out stories. And I think now I appreciate it when we just learn that this is a fact about the character and then we sort of move on for it.
Her costume actually is really good too.
Yeah, and I love that Kareem comes at it from like, oh my God, can you imagine? And she's like, no, sweetie, this is what it is. This is who I am. Get on board with it. And then she also, in the giant fight scene that comes in a couple issues, she's a badass. So I liked her a lot. I'm hoping, because there is a spin-off series from this called Black AF America's Sweetheart. I would love a spin-off with her, and I would love to know more about her as a character because I think she's great.
She's called Black Base.
Great. Awesome.
Right?
I'm here for, or Black Bee or whatever you want. I would be here for it.
Now, the issue 2 moves into a scene where we get a gentleman who is being burned at the stake by some very racist people. And the FBI shows up to grab him, and there is an amazing splash page of this character where we find out that, he basically is a fire starter.
Yeah.
Now I forget this character's name, but
I will say, if I may present a criticism, I think the names could have been mentioned more, or I think a caption box could have been well used in these issues.
You know what? I'm going to say that too, because I read this book. I would say 2 years ago. I read this book when it came out.
Yeah, me too.
And then I read it for this book club, and I'm looking at it right now, and I'm having a hard time remembering the characters' names.
Who aren't Kareem, Juncture, and Waters.
And there is sort of this standard in comic book writing. It's a lot of the intro to comic book writing books where every issue you kind of need to remind the reader of a character's name. And they don't do a good job of that at all.
They don't, and that's a criticism that I will put at the feet of a lot of modern comics. It's a criticism that I had when I was reading The Woods, and I like James Tynion. But I do think when you are writing for the trade, sometimes people, creatives forget that we do need to be reminded, because this isn't Batman and Robin. These are new characters.
It's not a movie.
Yeah, and these are new characters who I want to love as much as those as Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Black Panther, whatever. But I, as a reader, do need a little bit of hand-holding and a little bit of reminding of who these characters are. So it's like a bummer to be like, oh, this Firestarter character, and like I can see him in my brain. I remember that sequence. I don't know what his name is. And he becomes a pretty important character.
He becomes a very important character towards the end of the book and stuff like that. Ashley, as we enter the third issue or the second issue, do you have any other thoughts? Any things you want to add?
I do.
Because Ellen takes stage. I don't know if you want to talk about Ellen.
Yeah, like I said, I love Ellen. I think she's a great POV character. I like this fire starter character, but by the time we get into issue 2 and 3, Kareem is really taking a back seat. He's
not the lead character anymore, yeah.
And that's disappointing to me because I feel like in the first issue and in the solicits and all the press that popped up around this book, we're sort of sold this bill of goods that Kareem is the protagonist. And honestly, until issues 5 and 6, like the final 2 issues.
Almost issue 6.
He doesn't step back up again. We have these subplots, and this Firestarter character, turns out he has some ties to Juncture. He's deeper in it than we thought. I don't mind spending issue 2 with him. But if Kareem is our protagonist, I think we needed to see more of him in the middle. And I think and it's possibly because Kwanzaa didn't know if he was ever going to tell any more stories in this universe.
Well,
there's a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of plot in these books that I think could have all been served better if we sat with them a little bit longer.
Well, I think you are correct. I think the issue 1 got beaten out, got broken down, got perfected almost to a point to where it became so good that everything following it was going to have a hard time living up to it. Mm-hmm. You are correct. Issue 2, 3, and 4 of this are a lot of backstory, a lot of backstory, a lot of exposition, a lot of stuff. And you are correct. We do kind of forget Kareem. I mean, there's this whole subplot of the evil white millionaire who is like...
Yeah, Mr. Man, which I thought was a very funny name.
Well, I appreciate that too. And I weirdly, I want to ask you, I kind of see him as a ginger. I don't know if you see him as a ginger too.
Or blonde, yes. He has to be the whitest white guy.
But there's also, and I think this is intentional as well, there's even a super ape in this book.
Yes, that's 100% intentional.
Like, I think that is an intentional joke, but there is like issue 3 is mostly this giant action scene where some of the black metas, I'm just going to call them black metas, I don't know if there's a better name than that, come in and attack Mr. Man.
Yes.
And they fight him. It's a big action sequence. And you do not see Kareem until almost the end of the issue. But there is an interesting thing where with Kareem and Juncture, Samson, I was going to call him.
Yeah.
Black Samson.
It's just hard when you come up with that reference to the character in your brain to be like, that's not their real name.
Where Kareem and him have a confrontation, and you learn that Samson is not the pure good that we thought he was.
He's not as altruistic as he presented himself as initially. Yeah.
Yeah, because he even tells Kareem, he's like, I'm gonna lock you up. And then Kareem escapes out of a grate and says, possibly the best line in this whole book, listen to these nuts.
Yeah. If you don't know that reference, hop on YouTube really quick for a minute.
But there's a lot of stuff in that, but
I like that turn for the character where like we do learn that Juncture doesn't have everyone's best interests in mind, because it feels very classic Professor X to me. Professor X, since the movies, we've come to view him as like this very kind father figure, but he always has a long game, and he, like Dumbledore, like a lot of these mentors, doesn't always have these characters, the human being's best interests in mind. And Juncture's working for the greater good here. He's not working for Kareem, and Kareem doesn't like that. So he leaves, which is a very teenagery move to me.
Yes. As we move into the next issue, we get to meet a character that Kareem calls Hood Rat. And I love this. The character speaks in Arabic. Mm-hmm. And the word balloons are in Arabic, which I think are great, because Kareem, of course, is running through the sewers. Now, this, of course, is the point in the story where we learn that Kareem, he's so powerful, he's got so many quirks, that the real worry about him is that they think they can take his powers and adapt them to give white people powers.
Yeah.
Which is something, it's the only advantage that the black heroes in this book have, and they definitely do not want that to be. I guess you could say he's sort of the rogue of this universe, because there are a lot of X-Men overtones of that. Did you like that twist, that turn? I actually did like that turn, and I liked the idea because I specifically think that it brings up the plot point of that this is the Black Americans' only advantage is that they have superpowers. That's it.
Yes. I think this book is one of the truest and most accurate representation of how people, governments, police forces would react to anybody getting superhuman powers, and particularly traditionally oppressed group of people getting superhero powers. Because we're afraid of what we don't understand, and because
we don't like things that are different.
We don't, and particularly in North America, and particularly in the United States, the businessman is king. The billionaire is king. And so the idea that Mr. Man, his only goal is to give white people superpowers, or more accurately himself, I think that's 1,000% what would actually happen. And even though like the idea of superpowers is very genre-centric, it's very abstract, I appreciated that even their villains were grounded in that way.
Yes, and of course the twist this page, or this issue, excuse me, is that, Kareem breaks open the fire starter from earlier, and then eventually Black Samson, I was going to call him, Juncture, brings in Ellen.
Yes.
And brings her to the side and tells her basically the secret, or the big, reveal of, Black people have powers. And I like, actually, there's a scene in issue 5 where he gives the exact statistics of like how many people, like it's like, oh, it's this many people and it's this many people and it's
in
this percentage.
These countries.
Yep.
I like that moment. I don't traditionally love a speech in comic books. There can often be a lot of words on the page. I liked this speech because it was well written.
Well,
and because there was enough room given in the art, so they're not covering anything.
I assumed the idea of that was because there is this thing where superheroes are mostly American, mutants are mostly American, and I looked at it as that this was a little bit of the writers nodding back to that X-Men legacy in this book and sort of being like, this is our explanation for why it's mostly African American.
Yes, but
people.
they do nod. They were like, there are people in Africa with powers. There are, like, they list a couple other countries.
Yeah, they say the South America, the Caribbean, and South Africa,
which are some of the highest concentrations of people of African descent. But I appreciate that they do keep it close to home, and that's just because all of the creatives are American. So that's how we're reflected. It's the same thing with X-Men. Yeah, it was cool.
Now, Kareem gets locked up.
Yeah,
and
he does.
meets Overdrive.
Overdrive,
who I think is a very interesting character. But then the book goes into Ellen. You get to meet Black Samson, Juncture, Black Samson, and Ellen go into this sort of AI where they have a holographic chess piece.
Yeah.
Very Matrixy.
Also very X-Men, very Cerebro.
Very X-Men. Now, Ashley, let me ask you this. When I started out in issue 1 of this series,
I have thoughts.
I did not expect us to have the climax in a prison. But when you think about what this story is trying to do, and you think about the themes of this story, it kind of makes perfect sense. It's kind of a great set piece for the story. What do you feel about, like, the end of this book is we're in prison?
I think from a meta-narrative perspective, of course this was going to happen. Maybe it is because I am white. Maybe it's because I am not American. Maybe it's because this is not an experience.
Wait, what? You're not American?
I'm not.
That's true. She's not.
Not an experience that for me.
Brago, let's get a fact check on that. Brago, the cat intern of Geek History Lesson, is Ashley not American? Yes, we confirmed it. Okay, great. Thank you, Brago.
Thank you. You're currently asleep. But maybe it's because this experience is very separate from like what my experience is going through my day-to-day life. I would have never said in issue 1 that the big climactic moments are going to take place in a prison, but like, duh. Of course, there's a huge issue in this country right now with, and a lot of it has to do with Reagan's drug laws, but we're not going to get into that. You can watch the documentary 13. Thank you, Ava DuVernay. The huge part of the African-American population is incarcerated wrongly for things that white people get off for all the time, particularly now that marijuana is legal. It makes complete sense. It's a very smart choice. What I think is like weird about these, as we're coming to the climax and we're building toward that, is where we go inside the AI and we do have like the chess piece and Black Samson.
Juncture. I like calling him Black
His
Samson
superpowers, he can see 3 seconds into the future.
No, okay, that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so that's where we're at. Like, But they only find Kareem and where Kareem is because he goes into the Deus Ex Machina machine.
Well, it's a machine. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And to be fair, not the first comic book to do this.
Sure.
By a long shot. But this machine amplifies your powers. It amplifies his 10 times so he can see 30 seconds into the future. Is it convenient?
It's very convenient.
Absolutely. Does the Flash television show do nonsense like this on the regular? 1,000%.
That's fair. My only complaint about it is that this book previously to this has been making pretty smart choices, and that to me screams, and maybe as a person who has also written comic books, that to me kind of shouts out as, oh man, we're running out of page space.
It might.
We got to get to this ending, guys.
Absolutely. But to me, where I sort of jive against this a little bit is that it's a pretty street level book. We're dealing with a very real metaphor for what is happening in our world right now. And then to put them in machines and to talk to an AI, to me, it's several steps away from where we started the book. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that books can't get to that point. It doesn't mean that they can't grow. But for me, that leap came very quickly.
Can we talk about, so Overdrive and Kareem escape. They go into the secret lab. They find this woman with some very gross lesions on her.
Lesions, yeah.
Excuse me. Yes.
Legion is that guy from Downton Abbey.
My bad. And also the Legion of Superheroes. Lesions, excuse me. On her face, and she's asking for a mom. And
that sequence is so sad.
She explodes. And to me, I really like that sequence because it's so sad, but it's also a direct reference to the Tuskegee experiments.
Yes.
And if you don't know about those, go look those up as well.
Spend some time watching those documentaries.
But this is where Overdrive powers up fully. He is solid black in his powers.
He looks awesome.
I think it is also intentional that he is the darkest black character in this book when he powers on. And, of course, the white man, Mr. Man, comes out, and Overdrive introduces himself as O.
Yes.
He's like, I am O, and leads us into the 6th chapter, the big climactic brouhaha here, where
Kareem has also been calling himself X the whole time he's in prison.
Yes, which I think is also a reference to, now let me ask you this. I think that's a reference to, of course, the long history in this country of forcing African Americans to, by plantation owners, forcing them to not be able to read. So when they would sign things, they signed
with an X. I think so.
That's what I think this is a reference to. So it comes to it kind of becomes a big superhero fight, although O and the way they digitally color his eyes or ink his eyes looks really good.
Yeah.
Again, Jamal Igle killing it.
O is a character that I don't love. I don't think you're supposed to. I mean, I empathize.
Well, he's the Magneto.
Yes. Best designed character in the comic.
But let me ask you this. He is the best designed character in the comic. I think the way he's introduced is fascinating. I think it's really good. Do you like the reveal that O is Black Samson's son?
I'm mixed on it.
Or what was his name? Black Samson?
Juncture.
Black Samson.
I'm mixed on
Juncture.
that reveal because I think it's interesting. I think it is interesting that the son of this master manipulator, the son of this universe is like Nick Fury. He hates everything his father has done, and that's why he is taking what he views as real action. He is taking real steps towards accomplishing his goal. I think it's an interesting choice. I think it is a comic book convenient choice. Do you know what I mean by that? Like where we learn that Professor X had a secret sister the whole time who he tried to kill in utero with Cassandra Nova.
To me, it's a step. To me,
is it too comic booky for you?
Yes, that is the point where we fall. And again, if there is a weakness to this book, because I actually did enjoy this book quite a bit, this is it. Up to that point, I would have been just fine if they were friends or they had known each other. But to me, to make him the secret son that we haven't talked about for 6 issues.
And Juncture hasn't mentioned that he has a family this entire time. At
all.
Yeah.
And the fact that is way too comic booky. And that's the point where this book, I think, loses some of the power of the metaphor that it's been using so far.
Let me pose this question to you. If they were brothers or twins, if they were like two sides of the same coin, would it bother you less than if it were father-son?
No, I think any familial
relationship
kind of ruins that moment. To be honest with you, the closest you could have made it would be like, oh, we're old army buddies,
or close friends like Charles and Eric.
We grew up together.
Okay,
we're both from Brooklyn. We grew up together. Yay! I will say though, on the flip side of that, I'm going to sound off like a hypocrite here. I did enjoy the moment where he moved faster than time, where O moved faster than time.
Yeah.
And it's the one part of the moment where if Black Samson Juncture's time is, now I'm just saying it because I like I mean no offense with it. When Juncture's abilities are about time, and his son's abilities are about time. And to be honest with you, I loved the moment, very Flash-like in Justice League. Even though
it's like Flash time, actually.
Yes, where Kareem catches up to him.
But he can't do it well.
Yes, but he can almost do it.
Yeah.
So, but this story just becomes a giant superhero fight on a rooftop. And there's a whole half-page sequence about a woman pulling out a bazooka and firing at somebody.
That's a necklace, yeah.
Yes, and it's just a big fight about taking down Mr. Man.
Well, this is also a criticism that you can lob at any superhero movie. Like, how are you going to solve your superhero problem
without a fight?
Without a giant, it's what we expect. And this is where I think all of the supporting cast, I can't tell you a single one of their names except Hood Rat, they all have names that are sort of like metaphors or references. They do a good job with this fight. It's well choreographed. There's a lot of really cool moments in it. But it is a giant fray at the end of the day. That is what this is.
Yes. And of course, the big reveal at the very end is that O has revealed the footage through some manipulation that now everyone in the world now knows that black people have superpowers.
Yeah, it's been live streamed all over the world.
It's been live streamed in the world.
Which is only something you can do in the modern era.
Yes. And we get, of course, I love the idea that Kareem ends the book in his superhero outfit, which is X, and it has a hood on it.
Yes.
Now, Ashley, I want to talk about, are there any characters or anything like that really stand out to you in this book, or any other final thought? Let's kind of just look at this book as a giant story, and then we'll get to some Patreon questions.
Yeah. I said it at the top. I'll say it again. Ellen Waters is my favorite character in this book. I think she strikes the perfect balance between being knowledgeable of what is happening, but she is the one who is coming at it from the point of view. She's hope. She is hope in this. Juncture is he's downtrodden, and he's coming at it from a defensive place. And I think that's why I like her. And she's the only one without superpowers, so of course she's the most accessible. I wanted more Kareem in this.
Yes.
Because we do lose his through line. And I feel like I don't know enough about him as a person.
We know basically nothing.
Is he a good person?
No.
I don't know.
No, he's not.
Is he a bad person? I don't know.
Here's the problem with Kareem. Kareem really doesn't have a redemption arc in this.
Does he need one, though?
Well, usually in most young superhero stories, even if the young superhero starts out as a complete ass, usually by the end, they become more like an adult.
Worthy of the mask.
Exactly.
Usually.
Or worthy of their powers. They earn the right to have their powers. Or so when you're walking around, you won't be like, oh, that guy is not going to be afraid. Now, he does sort of get that moment at the end where he tries to get Juncture and O to agree to work together.
Yes, yeah. That's a nice moment.
He sort of gets it. But there are moments, even as late as issue 4 or 5, where, there's a moment in almost every issue where this happens with Kareem. In issue 1, when Kareem first meets the doctor that explains the quirks.
Yes.
The
really curvy doctor.
Yes. He goes, he always has a line in every issue where he's like, damn, that booty. And you're just like, whoa, Kareem.
I think that's supposed to remind us that he's young. Like, he's like 15 or 16. He's not 18. He's not on the cusp of being an adult. He's not like 25 and an actual adult.
Yes.
But I will say, I did find that moment distasteful.
Yeah, and that happens several times with Kareem. Also, I'd love to talk about... Let's talk about the dialogue in this issue, in this entire series. There's a lot of times, and again, we've talked about this several times, I am not a fan of writing in the dialogue, like the Chris Claremont style of Rogue and Gambit was like, oh, mon chéri, la, 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 la.
I agree. I agree. And I agree with the criticism that you're implying with that.
And this dialogue has it all over the place.
It does. The most I want to allow people is like cut a G off of like something. Gonna, duh instead of the. This relies very heavily on that. I think they were trying to show us that African American people come from a wide background. They speak in a wide variety of dialects and accents, but they lean on it heavily. And
do.
if it's just something there's nothing wrong with it, but
No.
you, it's just something that's not to my taste. So I agree with you on that.
I kind of felt that maybe they were going for the Southern angle. Like
I
trying
think
to
so.
go, yeah.
And there's a couple characters where I was like, are you supposed to be Jamaican with this? Or like sort of that same, I don't know.
But I will say that the opposite of that is that I do think this book, unlike a lot of comic books, has some very distinct and very diverse characters.
I agree.
This
including
cast,
a trans character is huge.
Yes, and an Arabic character and a Southern grandmother, and they're like. I don't think anybody is a copy of it. Everybody else, everybody in this book is very distinct.
I really
which is an
appreciated
advantage to this book.
The inclusion of the Arabic character because a huge swath of Muslim people are Black. And there was a huge move, particularly in like the 60s and 70s, of like the Black Muslims in America. So to me, it made complete sense to have that. And it was cool that even though this book gets huge diversity points just for not starring white people, the fact that we are accurately representing all the different African American cultures, I thought was really cool.
Okay, so before we get to our rating and before we get to some Patreon questions, we got to thank our sponsor for this episode, Wix. If you do not know what Wix is an easy-to-use website builder. I use it for my site, Jawiin.com. I use it for the Comic Drive for Soldiers. It is a drag-and-drop builder. So if you are thinking about building a secret website for your secret superhero club, this is the perfect place to do it. This is one of those website builders. You're not going to go to Wix and take a hammer against your head because they're website designer, I should say. I don't know the web designing tools. I don't know website designing, but Wix does. And they help you create a stunning website in very, very small amount of time. It's awesome. There's unlimited storage. They can give you a custom domain. They can give you email addresses, guys. We use Wix. We like Wix. It is one of the best ways to go. Now, there's many website builder sites out there that you can use for your secret organizations, for your fight clubs, for whatever you want, for your Black fan clubs. But Wix, I'm going to tell you, is the only one I know of where you could start on a Thursday, say like Thursday, 7 o'clock. You're like, I want to build a website. Go to Wix, build your website. Thursday night, you're going to be done. You're going to be done. It's the only one. The rest of them, you're going to be spending weeks. You're going to do it. So if you want to get started now by going to Wix.com. That's Wix.com/podcast. That's right. /podcast to get 10% off Wix.com. So Wix.com/podcast. And thanks to Wix for sponsoring this episode because they allow us to keep it free to you.
Heck yeah.
All right, so we're going to go into the comments from several of the listeners of this podcast because they had some questions for us and they had some, comments and concerns about Black because that's what the Geek History Lesson Book Club is about. We want this to be a conversation.
Now, really quick, Jason, if people are listening and they're not sure how to comment and be included in next month's book club, how do they do that?
Well, actually, I loved your professional setup.
Thank you.
And I'm going to completely ruin it by pointing it out. And that's my fault. Actually, you want to go to patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. That's the place that you can support this podcast. You can also help, just like our sponsors, keep it free to everybody. Basically, if you join at any level, even the $1 level. Yes, we have a $1 level.
Yes, we do.
We have a post every month. We announce like what the next book club is, and you go to that post and you leave your comments. We give you about 2 to 3 weeks to read the book before we do it. At the end of this episode, we're going to announce what the next one is, and we'll put the post up. And if you want to comment on the next one, that's where you do it. Patreon.com/Jawiin. But that's the only place we're going to allow comments. Please give them to us on Twitter at GHL Podcast. But the only ones we're going to read on the air
are the Patreon ones.
Are the patrons, because the patrons are the ones that they want book club to keep booking.
Well, yeah, they're allowing us to do this.
No, we're not. We can't read all of them.
But we're gonna do a lot.
We're gonna read and select a few. We can't do all of them just because there's not enough time. But we're gonna read a good majority.
I mean,
of
we
them.
had like 13 comments this week, this month.
I'm excited.
So.
I'm excited that the Miami University students all like stepped up to the plate. Anthony Torres has a question here. His comment about Black Volume 1 said, one of the things that stood out to me was the art being in black and white. What significance, if any, do you think there is regarding the creative decision as it relates to the story? Now, we talked about that a little bit. I
also want to say that Rosman's Reality, who is a great supporter of ours, asked the same question, the significance of the grayscale art.
Now, we talked about that. I think you're exactly right. I think you nailed it on the head. I think it was the Kickstarter angle of it all. But I bet that for the Kickstarter, they decided, I have no proof to this, it's just me off the top of my head. I bet
this is conjecture.
Yes, this is conjecture. This is hearsay. I think that they probably did it black and white for the Kickstarter to save money. And then I think when they got picked up, I bet you the comic book company, Black Mask, was probably like, hey, do you want to color it? And I bet they were like, no, let's not.
If Black Mask didn't mention it, I bet there was a discussion between the writer and artist about, do we want to do this? Do we want to retread on our old work? Or do we like the significance that we've set up here?
We have another comment from Jordan Wilson. She said, I really liked all the issues covers. They were fantastic. My favorite being number 4, a.k.a. Donald King. Which one from the volume was your favorite and why? Now, I already talked about one, issue 2, where the kids are being lynched. That's my favorite one because it's just so striking. I also love the one, I think it's issue 5, where the man's holding onto the jail bars.
Yes.
Ashley, what one is your favorite?
I think issue 2 is the most evocative, and I think it's because it's the most difficult. And I think that speaks to its strength as a piece of art. Like, forget comic book art, forget pop art. As a piece of art, it's wonderful. I really love the issue 1 cover. That's the cover they put on the trade where it's Kareem in the hoodie and the hoodie's red.
And that's the image they used for the Kickstarter, too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very evocative image because we know that there have been a lot of African Americans who've been shot for wearing a hoodie. Luke Cage used that same imagery.
Try to claim it, bring it back.
Yep, in the TV show, and Mike Coulter's walking around in the hoodie. I think it's very powerful, and I think the use of red in that cover tells you a lot because red is the color of life. It's the color of blood. It's the color that attracts the human eye the most.
Yeah.
So I just think from a design perspective, I think it's maybe the smartest cover.
We have another comment here of the book club from Tim Tang. Said, what are your opinions regarding the various villains? For a story that seemed to be grounded in real social issues, I felt that they were a bit over the top at times. I agree with Tim. Mm-hmm. I think that Mr. Man is a little over the top, but you had a great point during the discussion. There's no way calling him Mr. Man. Like, come on, he was supposed to be Mr. White Man.
I'm gonna be honest.
Which, so I don't mind that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think him being a mustache twirling villain is 1,000% intentional. Him not being a real person is 1,000% intentional. Because honestly, if you go back and look at the portrayal of black characters historically, they're often wide, sweeping stereotypes. Luke Cage was out of his own series for decades.
Yep.
So I think that was an intentional choice, and it doesn't bother me.
Now, let me ask you this, because the character of O, or Overdrive, is kind of also a mustache-twirling villain, even though he is one of the...
He's a pretty significant backstory, though.
Sure, but he also at the end is just like, I released the video.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that comes towards the end. What do you feel about that? Because O does turn into the mustache twirling villain as well.
I will say that you and I know that it's you sometimes get to your final issue and you're like, we have a lot to do.
Yep.
How can we do this as quickly and conveniently as possible? That's true. I think O is a dynamic enough character up to that point. It doesn't bother me. And I think, I have no confirmation on this, I think he's a character we're going to see more of.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Ashley, do you have any other questions you'd like to add from the amazing patron?
I do. Brock Severson has a question, which I think is a great question for any comic book. Do you have a favorite panel or page from this volume that really stuck out to you, and why? And we talked about like Kareem getting shot. We talked about...
It has to be Kareem getting shot.
Speech to Waters.
The silhouette in issue 1 of Kareem and his friends being shot is really
evocative.
Yeah, and it sticks in your mind. I remember reading that issue the first time, and I mean, I still remember being like, whoa. It just stopped me dead, and I cannot believe that the way they drew. That's my obvious, like, far and away. That's my panel.
I like that. I also like a panel that I think echoes it, because if you look at the way Kareem's body is posed there, and I don't know a ton about anatomy, I'm not an artist, he's very ragdoll. He's loose. He's wearing basketball clothes. You see his it's all about him being pushed backward and him losing control. The final time we see him is him jumping off the building as X. His body is loose. His limbs are up. His hoodie is waving. It's the same type of pose, but it's him taking his power back. Honestly, I think he looks a lot like Miles Morales in there. Well, and I like the symmetry of those two images for this volume.
I was also going to say that there are, I meant to bring this up during the discussion, there's a lot of points of this book where I'm reminded of the very first time we ever met Nightcrawler in the X-Men comic books.
I'll agree with that, yes.
Like, there was a lot
which you and I read recently.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, weirdly, I see a lot of Nightcrawler and Kareem.
Interesting.
And I know you're a big Kurt Wagner fan.
I love Kurt Wagner. I love the Incredible Nightcrawler.
There will be no Tex Willerman calls during this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be appropriate.
No. What other patron comments, questions do we have?
We have a question.
So this is the first one. I'd love to do all of them if we could.
Okay, well then I'm gonna go back.
Let's buckle in.
Also, some of these questions are sort of long, which I really appreciate people sharing their deep thoughts with us. But if I protract or shorten your question, don't take it as offense. It's just because you guys were excited and you wrote a lot.
We can quickly shoot some of
Okay,
these.
so Austin Maines asked, I had a few thoughts reading this book. First, the phrase "what the fuck" is used a lot throughout this book. Second, okay, that's great. Is there a question in this? I think they're all thoughts. I'm so sorry. I want to comment on that, though. I did think it was interesting when they chose to shorten the swear words versus just let them in, because there's a lot of just swearing in this book.
There is.
Second, I really liked how the first issue of the series starts off as grounded as Unbreakable, but then by the 6th issue, we get a 3-way battle between 2 superpowered teams with a lot of cyborgs and mechs.
It's a lot of cyborgs.
I think we also commented on that. And then finally, I really liked Juncture as the leader of the superhero team, had such a unique metaphysical power instead of a standard Captain America or superhero power set. That's interesting because in the superhero teams, we do get Superman is our basis of all superheroes. We do get Superman analogs, and Juncture does one thing and does it well. And other than that, he's just a smart guy.
His power is very unique. I mean, that is a very fair point. Him having. They could have just made him Black Superman. They really could have.
And I would have been fine with that.
I would have been fine with that, too. And I would have called him Samson.
Yes. Brock Severson.
Sorry for that bad joke.
Brock Severson has another question and says, say scientists come out tomorrow and claim that there is a superpowered gene. Do you feel today's society would be more accepting if anyone could potentially have superpowers, or more accepting of knowing only certain minorities have the ability to have superpowers? Would there be a similar reaction either way? I'm
going to be very frank here.
Please do.
I think if scientists came out and said, let's say Latinx people are the only people that can run at super speed and nobody else can, I weirdly think human society, we would round them up and we'd put them in camps.
1,000%.
And I think all you have to do is look at the current news to come to that conclusion. I do not think it would be. I think the only way it's accepted if everybody has it.
I agree.
Everybody has it.
And Jason and I have had this discussion a lot privately. If there was only a Superman, I think the military would grab that person up so fast.
We'd kill him.
And experiment on them.
We would kill him, yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for the military. I have a lot of respect for people who serve in the military, but I think when you look at the current state of our society, I think we'd be bad. Well, I think we'd do bad.
I think you're making 2 points there.
Sure.
Your respect to the military, it's kind of different to the current state of the society. The reason why the military would want to grab that person up is because it's tactical, right?
Absolutely.
That person has a tactical advantage over you. Everything you're taught in the military is you must have the tactical advantage. So to have the tactical advantage over a Superman would be to capture the Superman. That kind of is a different issue than the state of politics and racial stuff in this country.
Can I ask you another question as the only one of us who's ever served in the military?
Sure.
Do you think if there was a super person, a superpowered single human, would the military look at them as a tactical asset, or would they look at them as an enemy. Or as a weapon?
Now, they would look at them as an enemy. Now, I would say this. Okay, so just put myself in those shoes.
Absolutely.
If I was the superpowered person, the way I would be, I would go to the United States government and volunteer. Because I would say, hey, pull every current service member out of dangerous places right now.
Yeah.
I'll go there.
Yeah.
I will go there. I will take care of it.
Especially if you were bulletproof.
Well, if I had the powers of Superman, I'd be like, I'm going to go there tomorrow, or I'll go there in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I will take care of it. Pull those guys out.
Yeah.
Pull those women out. Let's not have them get shot.
And we are
And then I would go to sorry to interrupt.
No, please,
I would
please.
go to other countries that aren't the United States. I would basically try to end every war. That's just me.
And there is a big difference between we're using Superman because it's a very easy shorthand.
Easiest one.
There's a big difference between Superman's powers and like Juncture's powers of seeing 3 seconds into the future.
Or even Kareem's.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like Kareem, there's nothing that says that Kareem's is 100% invulnerable.
Okay, so more questions.
I pulled up the questions as well.
Here's some questions from Nicholas Baldwin, which is really funny because it's like everything Jason said. Did you get a Matrix vibe reading the panels where Kareem is thrown off the roof?
Yes.
A Men in Black vibe when we first see the project?
Yes.
Do you think that was intentional? Maybe.
Yes.
Was the project intentionally connected to Project S? So they call their team initiative the project.
Oh.
He's asking,
Yes.
do we think that's like
Yes.
projects?
100%.
Like, you know, a lot of African American people live in housing
That's
projects.
a good. You know what, Nicholas? That is a great pull that I completely missed. Well done.
Nicholas also has one final question. It feels very cinematic. You brought that up. It feels a lot like my favorite movies. Do you think this could ever be made into a good TV show or a movie?
I think it'd be a great movie.
I think it would be a great movie. I think I haven't read Black AF, their female spinoff yet, but I think if they pump out books that are at least this good, I think it would be a great series of superhero movies.
I want to read. We have a last comment here. Alan Pleskin has a comment here. And they say, they don't have a question. It says, in the end, I don't really get why Kareem wants to be a superhero or why he forgives the superhero black operation team when only black people can get in or why he is now called X, the majority. We talked about the X thing. The villain is a generic white corporation guy with a big white sword, and there's a side story with a female cop that kind of goes nowhere. At first, I thought she was going to be more integral to the plot, but not really. Well, she kind of is because O uses her.
She's the one who O takes control of it.
He's like, I'm really disappointed in it. I don't really think I'll buy the second volume, but it was a very interested read. Now, Ashley,
first of all, we respect your opinion. We will never say that your opinion is wrong.
Thank you for that comment.
Yes.
That brings up an interesting question for you and me, and that'll lead us right into our rating because we are going to do a rating based on a scale of 1 to 5. Ashley, for me, I do want to read Black Volume 2 because I think most of Volume 1 was a lot of setup, and I kind of want to see where Kareem goes, and I hope that Volume 2 is more about Kareem. What about you?
I agree. And I've said it repeatedly throughout this review. Like, I like Kareem. I like him a lot. And I wish we'd seen more. And honestly, like, I just wanted him to be a superhero. And that's probably because I'm a white person who would not have thought to bring this level of commentary into it. I think it makes sense that he elects to become a solo superhero at the end because he's just seen Juncture's Black Ops team. They're a goddamn mess. He's seen O's Black Ops team. They're really a goddamn mess. He's seen Mr. Man's team. They're a goddamn mess. And none of them ultimately accomplish their goal. So I think Kareem looks at all of these different organizations and says, well, I just do it on my own.
Yeah.
Which, especially as a 15, 16-year-old boy, who's invincible? Why wouldn't you go out there and become a superhero? And I'm interested to see whether or not the second volume is going to be him doing a lot of good or him failing and learning that he needs a support system around him.
Yeah.
That's what I would write. So I'm not saying that anyone has to do that.
What rating would you give it? Based on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, what would you give Black Volume 1?
I think Black Volume 1 is a big swing. I think it's an excellent idea. I don't always think the plotting lives up to the idea. And maybe that's because I wanted something different than the creators intended from it. That's fine. I think it's an important book. I will give it a 4 out of 5. And part of that is definitely because Jamal Eigel's art is transcendent.
Oh, by the way, everybody out there, I just realized this is the very first book club ever. We don't have a rating system. Well, we like Major Spoilers has Meatloaf. And Star Trek The Next Conversation has Andy's.
Should ours be
Super Friends out there? Tweet us on Twitter.
What do you want our rating
at
to
GHL Podcast? What should the book club rating be?
Should they be Bragos? Should they be cats?
1 out of 5 Bragos, or 1 out of 5
Should they be books?
1 out of 5 Samsons?
Or
1 out of 5 books?
1 out of 5 Mind Universities?
Guys, we need ideas right now. Hashtag book club rating. What the hell do we call this?
And if we pick yours, we'll send you a postcard or something fun like that. So send us your ideas. Send us your huddled masses.
Well, I can't promise that. I can't promise that. Book club. You might actually not get anything in the mail. We'll just say yay.
We'll see.
Okay, for me, I'm just gonna do this really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this hashtag book club rating. By the way, I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. Bragos. I'm just gonna call it. I think it's worth reading.
Absolutely.
Because the idea, you're right, is a big swing, and this hook is amazing. I think the execution kind of falls apart, but that doesn't dissuade me from checking out Volume 2 because I am interested to see where this could go. This to me comes off as sometimes like a pilot episode of a TV show.
I will agree with that.
Sometimes pilot TV show episodes, they're not always great. They're 50-50, I think. Sometimes they're really great. Sometimes they're really terrible. But if the idea is good enough, I'll watch past episode 1 just to see where they go with the idea. And this idea is good enough. I'm giving it a 3. All right, Ashley, that is all for Black Volume 1. But we got to talk about what the next book is.
Yes.
The next book club episode will be Geek History Lesson episode 247. This is 244.
These two, because they were our first two, they're coming out closer together than any of the other ones. I know they're quick, but you guys are smart. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, that episode will come out the week of March 19th, and it is going to be Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Higher, Faster, Further, More. Again, to repeat, the next book club episode will be Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Higher, Faster, Further, More. You'll have about 3 weeks to read this. We're going to have a super special guest on that one.
Yes, we are.
If you want to read that book, go to geekhistorylesson.com/book club. Pretty easy. And you can find a link to buy the next book at the time of this airing of this episode. That link will already be there.
Oh, yes, it will.
So the minute you can read it, you can go to Amazon, you can buy it, a little bit comes back to the Mind University, and you can read it ASAP. And you will be ready for the next book club. I think this is really cool. I'm very excited about these book clubs, guys. I think book club episode 1 went great.
I had a great time.
I would give us a 5 out of 5 Bragos.
I would also give us a 5 out of 5 Bragos. And before we leave, I just want to say that I hope people enjoyed this. I hope they enjoyed the things that we were positive on and the things that we were critical of, because we want to go in depth. We want to explore story because it's something that we love, and we know that you guys are here for.
Yes. And now we're going to go into the last section of the podcast, the honor roll. Ashley, what is that?
The honor roll is where if you are amazing and you go over to iTunes/Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars, we'll read what you write.
Isa Ruby gave us 5 stars and said, love you guys. Amazing discussions and an amazing podcast. Thank you for everything you do, all the work you put into researching the characters. I love the passion you have discussing these characters and stories. It's super interesting. Huge DC Comics fan here for more DC episodes. Thank you, Isa
Well,
Ruby.
not this week.
Yeah. The next one comes from Dan Shazam Ross. That's a great name.
Love it.
From Jupiter Jet to their awesome Patreon content, Ashley V. Robinson and Jason Justice Inman are quite literally the gold standard. One of, if not the most informative geek podcast out there. Because of their JLA podcast with Mark Waid, I was able to win a comic book trivia event. Wow,
hey,
good luck.
That's amazing.
Keep on doing what you guys are doing, and please do a Shazam GHL. Is a Shazam GHL on the docket?
It is, and I think you're teaching it.
It's the first I'm hearing about it. Okay, all right. I gotta do a lot of research.
We have plans.
I do love the big red cheese.
We do have plans for a Shazam episode, and like I've been trying to cryptically tell people on Twitter, wait, closer to the movie.
Yeah. So Isa Ruby and Dan Shazam Ross, thank you so much for leaving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. That really helps us in the search algorithms.
Yep.
And because of that, we've opened up the door to the Teacher's Lounge. Come inside. There's a pile of white powdered donuts for you.
Ooh, yummy.
They were brought by Mrs. Grabowski.
Who is Mrs.? I think you've talked about Mrs. Grabowski.
She teaches shop, remember?
Nope.
I don't know if she does or not. But Mrs.
I also
Grabowski
think we
teaches
have
shop.
4 or 5 shop teachers here at the Mind University.
It's a big school.
We're trying to work on our Quinjet. Please sign up for shop.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget you can subscribe and download and listen to this podcast on places like iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to it. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Ashley, where can that be found?
People can follow us at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, and on Twitter at GHL Podcast. And if you are making requests, please make it on one of the official channels. If Jason and I see it on our personal accounts, we might forget.
Yes, and don't forget to follow us on our personal accounts at Jawiin, Jawiin for me, and at Ashley V. Robinson. Those are the correct handles for Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, they are.
Both of those, so go follow us over there. Guys, also don't forget about our Patreon, patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. That's the only place you can comment and get into the episodes for book club. Also, you can listen to our GHL Extra podcast, where this week we're going to be talking about, I want to talk about the best Black superheroes. I want to just have a general discussion about that and how successful we think companies have been with that, and also like that. We're going to go into the last section of the podcast, the hashtag stick around, where we do a brief discussion to make sure you stick through all our ads.
Yeah.
A big announcement here, Ashley. Intern Brago, the GHL intern, has been working on a theme for hashtag stick around. Here it is. I think it was amazing.
There was a second where I thought you might have secretly edited. Yeah.
No, there's nothing. He doesn't make anything. He's asleep. Well, now he's
your
awake.
Laughter actually just woke him up. Please, I also want to say this too. Someone please send us fan art of GHL with Brago in it. Please, please, please.
Well, I just want to announce the GHL intern Brago is only going to be around for book club episodes because we need the extra hand. So he's not going to be around for everywhere. Whatever. Hashtag stick around.
Also, if you follow us on Patreon, we do post pictures of him interning on our lens.
Yes.
So there's another reason.
Jamal Igle is awesome, right?
He is so awesome. I met him once at a convention.
I did too.
Really lovely.
He was very nice.
He looks great.
He's also, by the way, if you're a fan of the art of Black, I want to point out he did 2 volumes of this kid-friendly comic book series called Molly Danger. He also kickstarted as well. It is fantastic.
Molly Danger was one of the OG Action Lab books as well, and was one of the reasons that Jason and I chose to pitch to Action Lab when we were doing Jupiter Jet. Yeah.
Molly Danger is great. Jamal Igle, criminally underrated. He's so good. And again, we've talked about it on the podcast before when we had Sterling Gates in our Supergirl episode. Jamal Igle drew most of that run.
Yeah, and he redesigned her Supergirl costume for that run.
That's right.
They gave her shorts. Thank God.
He's really, really good. That's all I wanted to do for a hashtag stick around. So thank you so much for listening. This has been Geek History Lesson, the first episode of our book club. I would now give this a 7 out of 5 Bragos. I am Jason, the intern, is back asleep Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And Professor Ashley, please close out the very first book club.
Didn't want to let Brago close it out?
No. Wait, did I? In one of the announcements, I think I called it book club. Should I call it book club?
You did. You woke him up again.
I woke him out again. It's okay. Please close out the book club.
Class and the book club is now dismissed.